In this video, I'm going to be going over exactly how much dividend income I made in the month of August from a $98,000 account. And to analyze this, we're going to be jumping into my do-it-yourself investor toolkit. We'll be looking at things like my investment dashboard, my dividend calendar, my daily dividend calendar. We'll also be projecting out what my portfolio will look like in the future. And like always, if you'd like to be able to download this spreadsheet and join a community of dividend investors, then you can head over to my Patreon page at the link in the description. I'd also like to quickly say thank you to Seeking Alpha for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Now we have a lot to discuss in this video, and the month of August was actually a pretty interesting one for the market. You can see it was diving down for quite a bit, but we've seen a little bit of a bounce back over the last 5 or 6 days with the market. So my portfolio value has jumped up quite a bit. It's now sitting at its highest level ever, $98,500. So I'll go ahead and zoom in so we can start to break this down just a little bit more. You can see I'm now up around 6.81%, but if you include all the dividends I've received and also my realized gains, I'm actually up around 12.25%, so the portfolio is doing pretty well so far. Now, I also have a pretty large cash position at this moment. You can see it's sitting at around $19,000, so I'm around 84% in stocks and 16% in a cash position. Now, the total holdings for my portfolio is currently sitting at around 33, so it got reduced by just a little bit over the past month. I talked about that in an earlier video over the past month, but I'll also talk about it in just a little bit. If we come over here, we can see my cost and market value chart. I'll blow this up, and obviously SCHD, by far my biggest position, which you can see here. But for a lot of these positions, the market value is higher than the cost, meaning that I've seen some pretty decent gains. We can actually see this a little bit better with my growth chart. I'll blow this up, and you can see I do have a few losing positions, but the majority of my positions have done pretty well. My biggest winner so far is Broadcom, stock ticker AVGO. I'm currently up around 73.14%. Also Caterpillar Financial, I'm up around 58.45%. I also have some pretty good other positions that I'm up quite a bit on, like JP Morgan. You can see Starbucks, Lowe's. We also have an Apple position over here. Cisco, we have a SJM position. We have Coca-Cola, I'm up nearly 30%, and also EPD, I'm up around 27%. Now, as of right now, my biggest losers are going to be Verizon. I'm down around 24.6%. 3M, I'm down around 20%. Walgreens, I'm down nearly 40%, so definitely a big loser right there. And then also MPW, down around 38%. Now, the good news about these losing positions is I actually have very little capital invested in these positions, and I'd actually argue that some of these positions are on the chopping block. Now, the reason behind that is not due to the fact that they're currently down quite a bit, but as I continue to analyze my portfolio and look at what I want for the future, I need to keep in mind that the end goal of my portfolio is to one day be able to live off of dividend income, so I need to invest into companies that have the ability to continue to increase their free cash flow year over year so they can increase their dividend payments year over year. So when I look at companies like Verizon or Walgreens, I really don't know if they fall into that category, so I am considering selling out of these positions in the future so I can reallocate that capital into positions I believe in quite a bit more. But I'll touch on that maybe more later in the video. Now what I want to do is touch on my portfolio allocation right now. If I blow this chart up a little bit, you can see SCHD, currently my largest position, sitting now at almost 38% of my entire portfolio. Now this position jumped up quite a bit because I sold out of 2 other ETFs. I sold out of SPY and VOO and reallocated that capital into SCHD. This was a move I'd been wanting to make for a while, so SCHD now takes up quite a bit more of my portfolio. Now I want to go ahead and touch on some of the other positions I added capital to over the past month, and I already mentioned SCHD. This is a dividend ETF I am a big believer in, but really I just reallocated capital from some of my other ETFs into SCHD this month. Now, with market valuations currently being pretty high, part of what I'm doing is just dollar cost averaging into SCHD because there's definitely not as many opportunities in the market right now. But some of the other positions that I added capital to over the past month were Altria Group, stock ticker MO. I added capital to Texas Instruments. I really like this company. I'd love to see it come a little bit lower. I added capital to Realty Income. This is a company that's actually trading pretty close to its 52-week low. They pay out dividends every month and has a pretty nice starting dividend yield sitting at 5.43%. The next company I added capital to is another real estate investment trust, and that is Vici Properties. I really feel like this company is currently slightly undervalued. I added capital to Bank of America. I added around $28.50. I do like them long term. And then the final company is actually a company I don't necessarily think is trading at a discount, but that is Visa. I really like this company long term and think they have the potential for continued phenomenal free cash flow growth, which makes me feel very confident in their future. And we can see here, SCHD, I already mentioned, still the largest position in my portfolio, but then we also have Microsoft, makes up almost 11% of my entire portfolio. We also have a couple of other slightly larger positions like MO at around 3.8%. We have Realty Income at around 5.1%. We also have Domino's Pizza, actually a position that makes up around 3.2% of my entire portfolio. Now, my larger positions for the most part have done pretty well for me as we saw with our growth chart. I'll go ahead and scroll down and we can look at my stock allocation by industry. Now, one update I do want to make to this is I do want to break out my ETFs into their actual industry, but that's a project I'm working on. But again, SCHD is the only ETF I currently own, makes up around 38%. Technology is the next largest at around 19.1%. We also have real estate at around 10%, financials at around 11%, consumer defensive around 8%, consumer cyclical around 7.1%, and then a couple of other smaller positions like healthcare. We also have energy, industrials, and communication services. Now, the last thing that I have on here that I want to talk about is my future portfolio outlook, but we're actually going to come back and look at that just a little bit later in the video. The next thing that I want to look at is what everyone wants to see, and that's how much dividend income I made in the month of August from my portfolio. So if I open this up, I'll go ahead and zoom in just a little bit once again, and you can see in the month of August, I made $181.57 from my dividend portfolio. Now, this wasn't very close to my all-time high, which I hit in June. I made $330 essentially in June of 2023, so the last couple of months have been a little bit lower, but that's because June was a month when I received my payment from SCHD, which that also means that next month should be my highest month of dividend income ever. Now, if we scroll up, you can see my expected yearly dividend income has jumped up quite a bit from last month. It's now sitting at around $3,509. Last month, it was closer to around $2,900. A lot of that was because I reallocated capital into SCHD, but again, like I mentioned, I added capital to some existing positions in my portfolio. My all-time dividend income is now sitting at around $3,291, and my average monthly dividend's getting very close to $300, so that's a pretty cool accomplishment. Now, my current portfolio dividend yield jumped up a little bit after allocating capital to SCHD. It's now sitting at around 3.8%. I'd actually like to see this a little bit lower. I'd like it to be closer to around 3.5%. I find that to be a pretty healthy range for the companies that I own to be able to continue to increase the amount they pay out in dividends year over year. Now, dividend income by industry is a chart I have built out right here, and I think it's one of the most underrated things you need to be looking at in your portfolio, because if all of your dividend income is coming from one industry, that means there's a lot of risk with your portfolio if there were to be a market downturn. For example, if all of my dividend income was coming from the financial sector, then I would be at a high risk if something happened within the financial sector for lots of my dividend income to be cut. Now, you can see 40% of my dividend income comes from SCHD or ETFs, but around 14% of it comes from consumer defensive, 15% of it comes from real estate, financials makes up around 12%, and technology around 8%. So overall, I do feel like it's fairly well diversified. Now, if we come down here, we can see my dividend yield on cost. For the most part, I like to buy companies that have lower starting dividend yields, but high potential for dividend growth. So you can see some of those positions like Domino's Pizza or Starbucks or even Lowe's. All three of those companies are good examples of companies that will be able to continue to increase the amount they pay out in dividends year over year. If we come down here, we can see my projected annual dividend income. Now, back when I started tracking this in September of 2022, you could see I was projected to make around $1,345 in annual dividend income. Jump forward quite a bit, February of 2023, it jumped up all the way to around $2,103. Jump forward to May of 2023, $2,754. And now my most recent accomplishment, $3,509. This was the biggest jump that I've seen since I've been tracking my portfolio, so that is pretty exciting. It's also really phenomenal just to see the progress that I've made over the last couple of years. Tracking your portfolio is obviously great for analyzing your portfolio, but it's also a really good motivator because looking back and seeing where I was and how far I've come, it's just really exciting to think about what is possible. Now, the last chart we're going to be looking at, I need to zoom out for just a little bit, but if you can see here, it's my dividend income by stock. This is essentially telling me how much each stock that I own is going to pay me in dividend income every year. So for example, Altria Group going to be paying me around $320, Realty Income around $275, Vici Properties around $137, and then the big dividend payer in my portfolio is SCHD. They're now paying me over $1,300 a year in dividend income, so that's pretty phenomenal. So that was a quick breakdown of my dividend dashboard. We still have quite a few things to get to, but first, a quick word from Seeking Alpha. My contact at Seeking Alpha just reached out to me the other day to let me know they're going to be running a promotion at my link in the description where you can get a $50 coupon as well as a 7-day free trial. Seeking Alpha is by far my my favorite investment research platform. For example, you can see we're looking at Altria Group right here. We can see lots of charts, 5-year, 10-year. We get lots of data immediately, but my favorite thing to do is to dig into the dividend data. They do a phenomenal job showing you things like dividend yield, historical dividend yield, yield on cost. They also show you dividend growth rates. They show you dividend safety, which I think is so important. I personally like to look at the cash flow payout ratio, and they also can show you a company's dividend history. So for example, we can see right away Altria Group has a pretty phenomenal dividend history. We can also easily access all of the financial statements, as well as get insight to their earnings reports. We can easily see some valuation metrics as well as growth metrics. I use Seeking Alpha in nearly all of my videos, so if you're interested, be sure to check them out at my link in the description. Now the next thing that I want to look at is my dividend calendar. In my opinion, a dividend calendar is one of the absolute best ways to track your dividend income for a few different reasons. You can see exactly how much dividend income you made each month, how much dividend income you've made from each position in your portfolio, but most importantly, it's really easy to see how your dividend payments have grown over time. So for example, we can see Realty Income, stock ticker O right here. This company increases the amount they pay in dividends every single year, but I also reinvest all of my dividends and also add capital to them. So you can see month over month how those dividend payments have increased over the past couple of years. For example, my most recent dividend payment was $21.58 from them, but we can see in January of 2022, it was $5.83. So during that time period, it increased almost every single month. Now let's go ahead and point out exactly which stocks paid me dividend in August. We can see I received a $17.21 payment from EPD, $21.58 from stock ticker O. I received a $39 dividend payment from OHI, $28.35 from Verizon, $4.36 from Starbucks, $14.05 from Lowe's, $6.94 from Jeppy, $13.85 from Texas Instruments, a $5.28 payment from Caterpillar. Scroll down and you can see I received a $17 payment from JEF and a $2.41 payment from Apple. Now the next thing that I want to look at is my daily dividend calendar, and if I zoom out, you can see an example of what this looked like in 2022. It's basically telling me how much I made in dividend income on any individual day, and my highest day in 2022 was around $42.11, but I've already blown by that in 2023. My highest day has been $154.36. So I'll zoom in just a little bit and you can see on August 1st, I received around $33.66, August 4th, around $7, on the 9th, $14.50, 15th was a really nice day at $74.43, 17th and 18th, a little bit lower days, 21st, $17.21, and then on the 25th, $21.35. So overall, I'm pretty happy with my results for the month of August, but to see if I'm actually on track to be able to one day live off of dividend income, we need to look at my future portfolio outlook. So let's go ahead and jump over to my portfolio projections. I'll zoom in and we can talk about some of the assumptions that I'm quickly making. Fairly conservative assumptions. I'm assuming a price growth rate of 7% and a dividend growth rate of around 7%. Keep in mind the dividend ETF over the past decade has had around 12% price growth rate and 11% dividend growth rate. So with that in mind, these are somewhat conservative projections, but I'm also assuming a contribution of $2,500 every single month. And I'm projecting what this will look like over the next 30 years. Now, the next thing I need to do to see if I can live off of dividend income is look at my cost of living and also take inflation into account. I'm roughly projecting that my cost of living is around $4,250 a month, and I'm going to assume 2% inflation. Now, inflation obviously has the potential to be higher than that, but also my cost of living has the potential to be lower than that. So keep in mind, these are just simple projections, but that means in 30 years that my cost of living would be around $7,700. So keep in mind, inflation compounds over time just like dividends compound. So it's really important to consider that when seeing if you can live off of dividend income. So basically what I need to do is get my dividend income above this black line. So if we jump over to my live off of dividends analysis, you can see this red line is my monthly dividend income and the black line is my cost of living. This point right here, which they cross, is the point at which I would be able to live off of dividend income and never work another day in my life. So I'll go ahead and zoom in and we'll be able to see at what point that happens. I'll start scrolling down and you can see after around 5 years, we're still not at that point. After around 10 years, we're still not at that point. Keep scrolling down and it looks like in year 17, my monthly dividends would surpass my monthly cost of living, meaning at that point, I would be able to live off of dividend income. So to get a high level overlook of this, we'll jump back over to my investment dashboard. This kind of gives me an idea of where I'm gonna be at over different time periods. You can see we can toggle between reinvesting or not reinvesting dividends, but obviously I do plan on reinvesting dividends. So in the next 5 years, based on my assumptions, my yearly dividend income should be over $12,400 and my portfolio value sitting at around $358,000. In just 15 years, my yearly dividend income could be sitting close to $53,000. That's pretty phenomenal, and I'll have a portfolio value of around $1.5 million. And in 30 years, my yearly dividends could be sitting at $284,000 with a portfolio value of around $8.15 million. That goes to show you just how powerful the compounding effect is when you invest into stocks that increase the amount they pay out in dividends and also reinvest your dividends. And to show just how powerful it is, let's say that we don't reinvest dividends. You can see all of these numbers are reduced significantly and my portfolio value is less than half of what it would be if I didn't reinvest my dividends. So there you go, there's an update on exactly how much dividend income I made in the month of August from a portfolio of around $98,000. If you want to see more portfolio updates from me and also get access to some free investing resources, then you can sign up for my free newsletter at the link in the description. Like always, if you'd like to be able to download this spreadsheet and join a community of dividend investors, then you can head over to my Patreon page at the link in the description. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.